Okay, and we're live. We're with Zach Townsend at meanwhile.com, and I'm Trajan from Morning Download. Welcome, Zach.
Happy to be here, Trajan.
So we're going to talk about something I have never talked about in our newsletter or on the channel before, and that's Bitcoin-backed life insurance. So give us a quick rundown about what...
We're the only ones, so that's why I've never talked about it before.
Yeah, so what is it you do, and what's the need that you're feeling?
Yeah, I guess the first thing to think a little bit about is like what we believe Bitcoin is, right? And to us, we think that Bitcoin is a great long-term store of value. It may not feel that way day to day or even month to month, maybe even year to year, right? So even in my course of running this company, which is approaching 4 years, the price of Bitcoin relative to the dollar has gone, it was at 70 and then it went to 16,500 and now it's like at all-time highs around 125,000. But we think in the long arc of history, and we don't mean like 100 years, we mean like 10 years or 20 years, we believe that Bitcoin is going to be a durable store of value, because of its global and decentralized nature. So if you have concerns about currency risk or inflation risk or jurisdictional risk or political risk, like they're just things in the world, and Bitcoin is to us an amazing inflation hedge. And that's why, Fidelity and BlackRock are saying like have 1% of your retirement savings, if not more, in Bitcoin. And what life insurance is, whether that's in the form of an annuity, or in our case, we do what's called whole life insurance, is it's a long-term savings vehicle. Whole life lasts your whole life, and there's really two features of it. One is, it has a payout for your beneficiaries, whether that's your kids or your nieces and nephews or your wife or whatever. And the other is that you can borrow against the policy in your lifetime in a tax-efficient, tax-advantaged manner. Mm-hmm. So fundamentally what we are is we're a licensed, regulated, full-fledged life insurance company, with like independent board and audited financials and all this stuff. But we're entirely denominated in Bitcoin. So people pay the policies in Bitcoin, pay the premiums in Bitcoin, and then we pay the claims in Bitcoin. So if you were a 50-year-old or 55-year-old healthy man, I'll use big numbers. Let's say you put in like 1 Bitcoin a year for 10 years. It's a 10 pay, so you pay over 10 years. Your payout might be for your kids, 12 or 13 Bitcoin. And you can, again, in the out years, like in your retirement, you can borrow against the Bitcoin. So we have some users who are buying policies. They're 45, 55, and their plan is to borrow a little bit every month, in their retirement, and they really see this as an inflation hedge. Whatever your political opinions may be, I think we can all agree that there's a lot of debt in the country, and the purchasing power of
anytime soon.
Yeah, and the purchasing power of the dollar has gone down a lot in the last 5, 6, 7 years. So that's us.
So how is that different, or what are the benefits of Bitcoin versus a whole life policy that's invested in an index fund, which is typical? Does it appreciate more? Is it tied specifically to Bitcoin?
It's tied specifically to Bitcoin, right? So you put in the Bitcoin and then we pay you out the Bitcoin. Fundamentally, there is this question where we often ask potential policyholders, like, would you rather your beneficiaries got $1 million or 10 Bitcoin? And if your answer is definitively $1 million because you think like Bitcoin is, a Ponzi scheme or whatever, then this isn't the product for you. But if you think, wait, as part of my portfolio, looking over the last 15 years of history in Bitcoin, I think in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, that this Bitcoin thing is going to be a lot more valuable. Again, it's an inflation hedge. It has compounded, its CAGR CAGR has been a lot higher than the S&P 500, then like we see it as part of a diversified portfolio. But I do want to say though, like we don't usually see our business as convincing people who don't have some belief in Bitcoin to buy our policy.
Mm-hmm.
I think we are more in the business of saying like, hey, if for whatever reasons, there's ideological reasons, there's financial reasons, there's political, like whatever reason, you've decided you have an interest in Bitcoin. Again, Fidelity, BlackRock, Franklin Templeton out there saying like this should be part of a diversified portfolio. Then we sort of say like, okay, well, this is the right structure. It provides protection in case you get hit by a bus. You can borrow against it tax-free, so the appreciation isn't hitting you as hard. So just like if for whatever reason, like you're thinking about the ETF or you've decided to buy the ETF or buy raw Bitcoin or whatever, like that's, our product makes sense. And in the end, that our user base sort of splits it. We have people who are like crypto bros or Bitcoin whales or whatever you want to say. And those people buy it because they're like 100% bought in. And then we have a whole other set of policyholders who, again, see it more like, okay, this is part of my long-range tax, estate planning, retirement savings.
Yeah, I know in estate planning, because I used to be a financial planner, that whole life insurance is used a lot, especially for high net worth individuals, for all the tax benefits. And I thought it was interesting. I think you said that it's denominated in Bitcoin. So the premiums are Bitcoin and the payments are Bitcoin. So let's just use your example. If it's paid out in Bitcoin, you pay a Bitcoin every year, for example, and then you get 13
10
Bitcoin.
years. So it's a 10 pay. You don't pay forever, yeah. So
in 10 years, you get 13 Bitcoin. In 10 years, the price of Bitcoin very well could be $1 million, right? So you're getting paid out $13 million versus whatever the comparable would be under whole life. In dollar denominated, probably would be less in dollars.
Yes.
Have you modeled that out? Do you have a?
Well, obviously, we believe it'll be more because we think we're not a set of people who like don't think there'll be dollars. There are some Bitcoiners who are in that camp. I think we are in the camp that Bitcoin will be worth more in the future than it is today, at a rate of return that's likely higher. Although I make no guarantees. So that's sort of how the company is. That's the purpose of denominating it in Bitcoin, right? Is it both insulates us, like in our like solvency calculations and stuff from the price fluctuations of Bitcoin, but then it also allows us to use the way that the tax rules around life insurance are written to the benefit of our users. But yeah, I want to be clear, if you put in 1 Bitcoin a year for 10 years and each of those Bitcoin costs $100,000, so you've given us $1 million. Again, from our perspective, you've given us 10 Bitcoin, but and then Bitcoin is worth $1 million a coin. Well, you've made a great deal. I don't want to dismiss the possibility that Bitcoin could be worth pennies, and then it would not seem like a great deal, right? So,
well, if the price does go down, then your premiums go down during those 10 years.
Correct. Or you could always surrender, right? I mean, fundamentally, the way the company runs is like the company could be denominated in euros or Swiss francs or yen. It's just denominated in Bitcoin. So the pay-ins have some currency risk, but then the payout, the claim, or the borrowing also has currency opportunity, I guess, instead of currency risk.
Yeah. So how's the borrowing work? Just like a traditional whole life?
Yeah. Again, the policy, it's like we took a whole life policy from the 1830s, and instead of it being in dollars, it's in Bitcoin, right? So you put in the 10 Bitcoin in my example, you're promised 13. There's a surrender value that's amortizing over time inside the policy. You could sort of think of that like a savings account, and then you can take a policy loan against that amount. But the policy loan is also denominated in Bitcoin. And the reason it's a 10 pay is because you might be familiar with this, Darden. There's just all these rules about like in the Internal Revenue Code about like what is and isn't life insurance, what you can and can't borrow out of it. And we basically follow all those rules. It's just that we follow those rules in Bitcoin terms, which is allowed. And then, so you borrow from us in Bitcoin, and really you're just borrowing against what gets paid out to your beneficiaries, which is the same thing for a dollar policy loan, right? So if at the, when you die at 95, hopefully, you've borrowed out 2 Bitcoin, each worth maybe $1 million, as you said, then instead of your kids getting 13 Bitcoin, they get 11, right? So it's we don't really expect people to pay the loan back. And that's, again, common in policy loans. We expect that it'll be netted out against the death benefit.
Yeah, okay. So you've been doing this for 4 years. So you started this company when it was a little bit harder to do.
Well, I actually started the company when things were, great. So sort of late 2022. So that's, there are glossy magazine articles about FTX, and we were in a cycle. It was very high. I think what is good about the company, and I want to underscore, is like we had this idea. We pitched a bunch of investors. Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, led our seed round. But then we also had a bunch of big insurance names involved. And then FTX happened, and like it blew up, and BlockFi blew up. There's all these blow ups of people who did very irresponsible, stupid things, and we just kept building, right? So we got licensed, we are regulated. We have a chief compliance officer and a chief risk officer and 17 corporate policies and audited financials. And we just we believed that, Bitcoin in particular, I don't want to speak for all crypto, but that Bitcoin in particular was going to have a resurgence, and it was going to come back, and that proved correct. And we have believed in the company through thick and thin.
That took a lot of faith around 23, 24, 2.0 and all that.
Now I look like a genius, right? Because actually when Bitcoin was crashing below 20,000, again, now it's at 125,000.
Yeah.
We had raised all this cash, and I was like, well, we run a Bitcoin company, we might as well start buying because, we're not going to have a company if Bitcoin goes to zero either way. So we did buy a ton of Bitcoin, which is what we use as our capital, right? So insurance company, you have capital, you have to back claims, so we have a bunch of value in the company. Sorry, to answer your question, how's the reception been? It's been great. I mean, we, slow and steady, we've received hundreds of Bitcoin from our users. I'm happy to report that my co-founder and I were the first 2 policyholders, but that we didn't stay the only policyholders for long. And again, hundreds of Bitcoin, tens of millions of dollars in premiums that have been paid or prepaid to us, and it's been really good. And I think we've been, again, I think there's just a lot of people in the world who look at the last 5 years and they see a lot of inflation risk, currency risk, political risk, jurisdictional risk, and I think Bitcoin can be a really attractive long-term investment idea, and we are in the long-term investment business.
Yeah, what do you say to somebody who's older and just getting introduced to crypto, maybe not a crypto native yet, but looking at insurance, looking at a whole life insurance? And what benefit, I guess, would that be the pitch? Is the insurance hedge? I
think that's right. It certainly depends on their existing. Yeah, it certainly depends on their existing belief in Bitcoin, and it, I guess, depends on their holistic net worth, right? So it's sort of hard in the abstract, right? If you're going to buy $10 million in whole life coverage, I think it can make a lot of sense to have a 10 Bitcoin policy with us. If you're going to buy $100,000 in whole life coverage, then you're running up against like our policy minimums. So if you're going to take 10% of that, right? So I think that it's funny if you take our two populations, right? That when we have like younger Bitcoin native folks, what we're really saying is you should diversify your Bitcoin exposure. So they might have some Bitcoin in a hardware wallet, like they're self-custodying. They might have some like what's called a multi-sig, and then they like might buy an insurance policy. So they're like all in on Bitcoin, and then they're diversifying those Bitcoin holdings by having some whole life. And now I would say sort of there's a second population where they're sort of like planning their retirement. We have like family offices and high net worth individuals, all different kinds, and they're making decisions that are primarily obviously around the dollar and their retirement savings. And then, we see ourselves as like a component in that story. I wouldn't take 100% of your net worth and buy a Bitcoin life insurance policy.
Right, for sure.
All my recommendation.
Yeah, for sure. And I know that there are a lot of people who want to just live in a Bitcoin centric world. They want to earn in Bitcoin and spend in Bitcoin. In fact, I didn't mention this to you before the call, but I run a website called Zellix, Zellix, which allows people to buy things on Amazon and other retailers with Bitcoin and with crypto.
Cool. Yeah. So we're part of that. Like to us, one Bitcoin is truly one Bitcoin, and then we run a whole company in some ways based on that premise. And as I said, we were to my knowledge, the first company and still the only company in the world that has audited financials entirely in Bitcoin terms.
Really? Wow.
It's not in dollars. There's a little B in the corner, and all of it's down to the Satoshi.
Wow, that's pretty cool. That's really unique, and maybe becoming less unique as this.
Yeah. Well, exactly. I mean, I think just global decentralized store of value outside the control of any government. I think if that resonates with you, then I think Bitcoin should be on your radar. And if Bitcoin's on your radar, Bitcoin life insurance should be on your radar. Yeah,
that's a good place to end it. Anything else you want to wrap up or tell us where we can find more about Meanwhile?
Yeah, you said meanwhile.com. I think the main thing I would say is it's certainly a big decision, and every single person who begins the sign-up flow on our website, either I or someone I works with me, reaches out and schedules a call. So consider this live conversation here just the appetizer or the hors d'oeuvre, and then if you are at all interested, like you can have your own 30-minute or hour-long call where you talk about your personal situation. Like some people have trust, some people don't have trust, some people, whatever it is, we're happy to talk that through. We're always happy to do that. So again, meanwhile.com.
All right, cool. Thanks a lot, Zach.
Thank you.
All right, see ya.